The era of pyramid builders in ancient Egypt was called the Old Kingdom. Later Egyptian pharaohs abandoned building pyramids in lieu of using rock-cut mountain tombs. The most famous of these is the Valley of the Kings, where 63 different pharaohs are buried. Egyptologists call this new practice, this new era of Egyptian history, where pyramids have been replaced by cave burials, Egyptologists call this the New Kingdom, rather than the Old Kingdom, the period of the pyramid builders. And the change in practice came either because of ongoing security concerns, the fact that these pyramids are beacons for grave robbers, or it could reflect a shift in Egyptian religious practice and the prominence of a new god whose name was Amun, known as the Hidden One. And with the prominence of Amun rising in the New Kingdom, we find a new practice where caves replaced pyramids because, in fact, they represent Amun. Once New Kingdom pharaohs started being buried underground, especially in the Valley of the Kings, they began to build separate mortuary temples nearby. Remember that with the pyramids, the temples were immediately adjacent to the pyramids, but now they're in a valley nearby. And we see a very famous version of this, the mortuary temple at Hatshepsut on your right. And here the colossi of Memnon were actually part of another pharaoh's funerary temple that was semi-destroyed. This is really all that survived, but it was absolutely massive. Hatshepsut's mortuary temple is dedicated to Amun-Ra, a sort of fusion of the old sun god Ra and the new god Amun, and maintains the idea of procession all the way from the Nile up to the tomb, and culminating in a series of two sun-bathed terraces. Again, remember that Ra is the sun god, and so this architecturally symbolizes him. And those two terraces then lead into a cave that was cut directly into the cliff behind the building. And this, of course, this darkness is Amun. So the building is, in fact, symbolic. The terraces representing Ra, and the dark cave behind, cut into the rock of the cliff, is in fact Amun. And this only housed the funerary ceremony here. The burial would have been elsewhere. Now, Hatshepsut is interesting to us for another reason than her mortuary temple, which is pretty striking. And that's that she was a woman, one of the very few female pharaohs. She was the wife of Thutmose II, and she's wearing here in this image from her mortuary temple. She's wearing standard pharaonic gear, the Nemes headdress that makes her look like a cobra, with the Wadjet snake on her forehead. You'll notice that even though she is a woman, she's not shown as one here. Sometimes she is, but she has no breasts per se, and she still has that fake beard that is the king's. Right, so she's the wife of Thutmose. How did she become pharaoh? Well, she bore no sons to Thutmose II. And so when he died, the title passed to her stepson, Thutmose III, who was Thutmose II's son, by a secondary wife. But the younger Thutmose was only 12, and so Hatshepsut was left to rule until he came of age. And then she usurped power, claiming that her father, Thutmose I, had named her heir. This brings up a rather difficult situation. Hatshepsut was the half-sister of her husband. There was quite a bit of inbreeding here. And what she claimed was that Thutmose I had told her that she was to be the heir, the rightful heir of Egypt, not her stepbrother/husband, and not her stepson. either. And so this was the point of her claim that she could maintain power. She's apparently a very, very good pharaoh. And when Thutmose III finally did come to power, he had all images of Hatshepsut destroyed. You'll notice this one here has been pieced back together, but otherwise mostly shattered. Now, also from the Valley of the Kings is the famous burial of King Tutankhamun. He was the son of our friend Akhenaten that we discussed in class. Remember that Akhenaten had brought this strange body style to images, rubbery, soft, spindly arms, but curvaceous everywhere, because he had established a new religion where there was only one God. Well, after his death, after Akhenaten's death, his son, who was born Tutankhaten, changed back to the old religions and thus had to change his name back to Tutankhamun. And that's when we see him here. So he's the son of Akhenaten, Tutankhamun. We have a work depicting King Tut up in the Walters, showing him in the blue crown of war, called the blue crown because it was often painted blue. Tut was a fairly minor pharaoh, and he had a pretty small tomb. He was known for being the boy king. He was married when he was 6 years old. He became pharaoh when he was 9, and he died when he was only 18. So his tomb had only 4 rooms, whereas someone like Ramses II, who we looked at in class, had 14 different rooms in his tomb. So what makes him so important, what makes him so memorable? Well, the long and the short of it is that unlike the other tombs of pharaohs, this one was found relatively undisturbed in the 20th century, in the 1920s. So here we see Howard Carter working his way into these discoveries in, I believe, 1923. And when they found the tomb, you can see it was just crowded with luxurious things. Gold-covered items, a lot of carved semi-precious stones, alabaster cases, and so forth, gold furniture. You can see that his father's sort of more loose style continues here in the back of this golden chair from King Tut's tomb. In the death mask on your left, you see that he wears the royal nemes, and again it has the snake, the cobra, on it, which is this representation of Wadjet, who you remember also is known or shown as the eye of the sun god Ra. He's meant to look like a cobra as well by this nemes, and that makes him into a deity and very, very close to Ra. Added to this, you see, is a vulture as well, the neck of a vulture. And this is a different god, Nekhbet, who's another of the protectors of Upper Egypt, so the home of the original pharaohs. This mask that you see on your left was placed directly over the mummified body. The head would fit inside the mask, the shoulders come out here. I brought in his face because, in fact, he's around still, preserved. So here's the actual face of King Tut. This sat inside the gilded mask. The mummy with the gold mask was in place inside the coffin you see on your right. This is the inner coffin of King Tut. It's 500 pounds of solid gold, 220 carats, 91, almost 92% pure. On the outside of the coffin, you see that Tut carries a crook, a shepherd's crook, and a flail, which you can see over here as well. Remember, the crook and the flail come from the annual Hebsed ritual that proved the pharaoh's strength. Interestingly, Tut never made it to his Hebsed festival. You usually have to wait till 30 years on the throne He died when he was only 18, so he never really made it there. But still, he's shown as being vibrant and vital for eternity. His body is protected by birds that wrap themselves around him. It's not Horus, who you might expect, but rather it's Isis and Nephthys. They were the two goddesses who put Osiris back together again for resurrection. And as they're draped over Tut here, the symbolism is that he too will be resurrected. So the masked body was set inside the inner coffin. It was set inside two more coffins, the middle coffin and the outer coffin, which you see here on the left. The inner one still has this lapis lazuli and I believe jasper inlay. The outer one only in gold, but you'll notice that the symbolism, the iconography, repeats on each one of them. So this gives you an idea how this works. The body with the mask, which we'll see here, was placed inside the inner coffin on the right. That was placed inside the middle coffin. That was placed inside the outer coffin. And the whole thing was placed inside the stone sarcophagus. You'll notice that the stone sarcophagus also has Isis and Nephthys on each of the corners with their wings spread in protection. We're not done yet. That stone coffin was placed inside another gold shrine that was placed inside another gold shrine that was placed inside a fourth sarcophagus, a fourth shrine. So it was nested over and over and over again. Here's a view. The last of these shrines was then placed inside the room. And as you can see, it barely fit inside the room, inside the chamber where he was placed. So this rather elaborate burial ritual that we see here is the sort of thing that would have repeated for every of the pharaohs. And we saw in class a slightly more humble version for people of the nobility who would not have had so much gold, but rather would have also repeated some of this burial ritual so that their lives would be assured to be fulfilled in the afterlife, which simply continues the life that we're in.